Everyone, and thank you for joining us for our regular town council meeting of February 10th, 2026. If you all would please stand and join. Oh, before we do that, let's do a roll call. I know who's here, but just for the people watching, Madam Town Clerk, would you please give a roll call?
Councilman Gutenberg,
Here.
Councilman McCormick,
Here.
Councilman Sampson,
Here.
Councilman Johnson,
Here.
Mayor James,
Oh, and I am here. All right.
you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. If you all would please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council, you've had a moment to look at the meeting agenda that is set for today. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, if you are in favor of adopting the agenda as stated, please indicate by aye, if not nay. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, so we have, in accordance with the Maryland Open Meetings Act, Code of Maryland General Provision, Article Chapter 3-211, we are required to include specific information in the minutes of the next open meeting when a public body meets in closed session. To ensure full compliance, we will attach a written closing statement to the minutes of today's meeting disclosing the following information regarding our closed session on February 10th, 2026. The time of closed session was 5 p.m. The place of the closed session was here at Town Hall, and the purpose of the closed session was to discussion involves communication regarding pending litigation not appropriate for public disclosure. The individuals that were present in the closed session voting, names of members voting to close the session were Mayor James, Councilman Gutenberg, Councilman McCormick, Councilman Sampson, and Councilman Johnson. No members opposed and none abstained. This meeting was closed under the statutory authority of the General Provisions Article Section 3-305B8. The topic discussed was pending Maryland Department of Environment litigation. The people that attended this closed session were Mayor James, Councilman Gutenberg, Councilman McCormick, Councilman Sampson, Councilman Johnson, Town Manager Chuck Stevens, Assistant Town Manager Michelle Miner, Mr. Todd Pounds, who is our attorney, and James Jeffcoat. The action taken was legal consultation. The town's special counsel provided legal updates and the town's special counsel, which was James Jeffcoat, provided legal updates and consultation on matters with attorney-client privilege. The discussion involved communication regarding litigation with MDE not appropriate for public disclosure. This disclosure in the written closing statement will be made part of the public record to maintain transparency and meet the legal requirements of the Act. Next on our agenda is public comment. If you would like to speak this evening, I ask that you state your name, whether you live within the incorporated town limits, and if you could limit your remarks to 3 minutes, that would be preferable. Do I have anyone who would like to speak this evening? Seeing none, we'll go on to our next agenda item, which is the fiscal year 2025 audit presentation. Mr. Stevens.
All right, good evening, Council. This evening, we're going to be joined by the town's auditor, and I'm going to turn it over right now. And we'll get the presentation pulled up for you, and I'll ask him to introduce himself for the record and to the public that may be watching. And so go ahead and take it away, please, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Hi, I'm Dan Kenny, partner with Mitchell & Titus, and I am here to present the Town of La Plata's 2025 audit results. And if you can go to 2 pages on the table of contents forward, please. And this evening, we'll go through the audit highlights. We have a listing of the team members, talk about the summary of the audit results, and then, of course, the required communications. So if you go to the next page, this is where it begins with the audit highlights and indicates that we have audited the town of La Plata's financial statements as of and for the year ended June 30, 2025. And the audit was done in accordance with two auditing standards, generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards. And it's to make sure the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And I am pleased to report that you received an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. There were a few entries that were made regarding conversion entries that was consistent with last year. And then there were some other entries that were made that were below materiality. They were not material at all. And in fact, we've also issued a report on your internal control over financial reporting. And we are pleased to report that there were no material weaknesses identified and also no significant deficiencies identified as well. And then, of course, on the bottom, it talks about the non-attest service. We actually prepare the financial statements, and that is considered a non-attest service. But management has the competency to understand all the notes, disclosures, etc. Next page. And this is where it discusses our approach with respect to the different phases of the audit in the planning stage. And of course, we go through a risk assessment process, identifying key areas, and we tailor our approach and we customize our approach for certain areas within the audit. Throughout the audit, it starts, end of May, and it goes all the way up through the end of the year. It takes a lot of time to complete the audit. We had great cooperation with management, and it enables a successful audit to be completed in a timely manner. If you go to the next page. These are some of the considerations that as an auditor we have to consider with respect to fraud. We look at any aspect of whether or not there are any material fraud risk activities. We conduct interviews with personnel within the town. We also look at journal entries throughout the year. So it's not the standard journal entries that we're looking for. It's the ones that aren't quote unquote considered standards and that are a little bit of outliers. So we'll test those to make sure they're proper. And we have done so and there were no issues. We perform analytical procedures. Of course, we're going to look at your key estimates, and your key estimates relate to, of course, your net pension liability. And we look at the evidence provided in all these areas. And there were no instances of fraud noted in your audit. Next page. All right, this is our team members. You can go to the next page after that. And this is where it goes through some of the different areas with respect to revenue recognition, cash and investments, and receivables. On the revenue side, we confirm certain revenues. We perform tests of details of specific accounts within the revenues. And we also look at things analytically, not only compared to last year, but compared to budget. And cash and investments, we make sure your disclosures are adequate in terms of your financial statements for cash and investments. Your investments are valued at fair value. We confirm both cash and investments. And of course, we're going to look at your bank reconciliations. And then under receivables, we're going to look at the material receivable balances. Once again, we use confirmation as our evidence. And then we're going to also look at the allowance to determine what is deemed as uncollectible and whether or not that estimate is reasonable. And once again, all three of these areas, there were no issues noted. Okay, and then this talks about capital assets and depreciation, accounts payable, accrued wages, and long-term liabilities. So capital assets and depreciation is an estimate, so we're going to test that. Capital assets, we look at the additions in both your business type activities and then, of course, the government-wide as well. Under accounts payable and accrued expenses, accounts payable, we have to actually go from July 1 all the way up through the date of issuance of the report, and you have to determine are there any disbursements during that time period that should be reported in the year that we audited? And once again, no exceptions were noted there. Accrued wages and related payroll, we're going to go through your payroll process, go through the narrative and test an X number amount of employees to make sure the amount that was paid was proper. And then long-term liabilities, of course, we're going to confirm your bonds and notes outstanding. And then also, of course, look at your compensated absences and employee leave balance as well. And once again, no exceptions were noted there. All right, and then pension liability, I've talked about that a couple times throughout this presentation. And then within your financial statements, you'll notice that you have a disclosure. It talks about the sensitivity. So if your discount rate went up or down by 1%, you could see the impact on both the governmental activities and your business type activities as to what that would be. Once again, that's a significant estimate. And then, of course, your net position and fund balance. We look at all the committed amounts, the assigned amounts, and then what's remaining is your unassigned number. No exceptions were identified in these areas either. Okay, in the next few pages, these are the required communications. We conducted our audit consistent with the plan, scope, and timing. We have complied with all ethic requirements regarding independence in your accounting policies. In note 2, there were no significant changes. And if you go to the next page, this is where it's a continuation of the estimates. We talked about the pension obligation. On your financial statement disclosures, you have identified all your key and sensitive estimates. And once again, we did not identify any actual or suspected instances of fraud. We encountered no significant difficulties in dealing with management during our audit. Next page, please. We talked about the uncorrected and corrected misstatements. There were no significant or unusual transactions. There were no disagreements with management. And then next page. We received a representation letter from management. There were no consultations with other accountants. There were no other significant matters, findings, or issues. And once again, in your internal control report, there were no instances of non-compliance with laws and regulations that were noted. And next page, please. And the other information in the documents, this has to do with the required supplementary information and the supplementary information, and it outlines what our procedures are what we do perform in those areas. And then there were no issues as to whether or not the entity can continue as a going concern. And if you go to the next page, I think that's it. All right, I'll be happy to answer any questions. I appreciate all the assistance.
Thank you very much for that report. And it is just so great to hear that our finance team did an amazing job and that there were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. So those are always good words to hear. I will open up the floor to council if they have any questions about the audit. Councilman Gutenberg?
I don't have any questions. Congratulations to staff. Thank you. It's another good report this year. Thank you.
Councilman McCormick?
Well done. Thank you.
Councilman Sampson?
I echo the same thing. Good job. No questions.
Councilman Johnson?
Yeah, no questions. Thank you.
All right, and thank you for a brief report on what seemed to be a very long report. So we got the highlights. Love that. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And for
All right.
anybody out there that wants to review that, that is attached to our agenda.
All right, thank you again.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is fiscal year 2026 budget performance. Mr. Stevens.
All right, council, good evening. We're going to be joined by town treasurer, who's going to come up and give you basically a snapshot in time, looking back at the first half of the budget year, which ended December 31st. And in keeping with the theme, it's going to be a very high level overview. Ms. Larson.
So this presentation provides a high-level snapshot of the budget performance for the first half of FY '26. Overall, the town remains in a stable financial position with revenues tracking on or above budget and expenditures progressing as expected. Through December 31st, nearly 70% of the general fund operating revenues have been collected. Operating expenditures are tracking below 50%, and capital spending is potentially backloaded, with most projects scheduled for the second half of the year. Property tax collections are strong and expected to slightly exceed budget. Income tax collections are on pace, with the state projecting an additional $420,000 above budget for the remainder of the year. Investment earnings continue to outperform expectations with favorable interest rates. Departments with higher spending early in the year reflecting timing rather than overruns. Finance and administration include one-time annual costs like the audit. Event spending is front-loaded, but expected to remain within the budget. All enterprise funds are tracking close to mid-year expectations. Operating expenditures remain well controlled, and the year-end depreciation costs will align with projections indicating overall fund sustainability. Several key capital projects are moving through planning or early execution phases. Wastewater treatment plant upgrades are in design for Mod 2 and other key components. Stormwater projects are underway. Based on current trends, the town is projected to close FY '26 in a balanced to surplus position. Enterprise funds remain stable and at this time, no budget amendments are recommended. However, like every year, there will be budget reappropriations at the end of the year. Lisa?
All right. Thank you very much. That was high level and brief, so thank you. I will open it up to council. Councilman Johnson, going right at you first.
Yes, thank you, Mayor James. Thank you, Ms. Larson. I do have two questions. One on the page 2 where it says operating revenue and operating expenditure. I understand like we get two major payments a year with operation or revenue.
Revenue, so our major is the property tax, which comes in the earlier of the year, and the income tax, which comes in later of the year.
Gotcha. Okay. Is the ratio close? I know we have 70% collected and we're about 50% spending. Is that ratio appropriate?
Yeah, well, again, the property tax makes up about 60%
Okay.
of our revenue. We collected that. So yes, that is appropriate.
Okay, that makes sense. The second question is I'm not sure, for income tax. So the governor in the governor's proposed bill this year, they made the comment that they overstated the income taxes projection to municipalities. Are we at risk of that overstatement or
So
no?
actually, I get a report, and I get this because I request it from the state, which they give me a month to month what they expect it to be.
Okay.
So when I do budget, I budget the amounts that they expect from normal operating income. I exclude fiduciary like trust accounts and stuff like that. That is volatile. So I do not anticipate it to be under our budget. I'm going with the numbers that they have provided me with their estimates, but I do not anticipate us to be under. I actually anticipate us to be over.
All right, very well. Thank you.
Councilman Sampson.
Yep, I enjoyed the report. I have no questions.
Thank you. Councilman McCormick.
Yeah, thank you. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Thank you very much for this report. I appreciate it. So I heard a claim that, we have a couple of departments here that are expected to be under their budget for the year. They may have an expense obviously up front. You may see over the 50% threshold, but there's no concern there. Great positive claim. Is there any department that we are worried is going to go over their budget allotment for this year?
I do anticipate there to be two departments where a reappropriation. And when I say reappropriation, that means we're not adjusting the actual expense total.
Understood. Moving from one area to the other. What are those two departments?
Because of the recent one that
Sure.
of the playground, and the other one is the facilities. We had some repairs, like a roof repair at the police evidence building, and we also had to prepare the houses for rental, which we will have offsetting revenue for that.
Okay, and do you have an idea which department is maybe outperforming the guest that we're going to reappropriate from?
It probably will be a combination of different departments.
Okay.
I mean, I know fleet maintenance is well below because of vacancy that was partly filled.
Sure.
When we, at the end of the year, we'll reappropriate based on, I reappropriate based on category from one department to another within the same spending category.
Yep. And again, just for anybody listening, might be their first time in a meeting. I know you said this. I want to speak it back. Let me know where I go wrong. Reappropriation does not mean we're changing the actual expense to the town itself. It's just moving money from one area that maybe we over budgeted to another area where we need that money to actually be spent. For example, I give $10 to my one kid who runs a lemonade stand, $10 to my other kid who runs a lemonade stand. She actually needs 12. He only needed 8. Still the same overall cost to me, $20, but I just change it where it's going.
Yes.
Okay. Speaking of back, sounds pretty good.
Yes.
I know it's a dumbed down version of it.
Budget is planned, and we try to stick to the plan. Sometimes things happen.
Understood. Thank you. Is there anything that you see for the remainder of the year, an unexpected cost? I know you've been in the seat for a little bit longer than this council has, other than the mayor, that we're not anticipating for, and we should. I know on paper it looks great. Is there anything that you've seen in your experience that puts us in a tough spot for next or for the remainder of the year? Great. All right. Well, then this is a great report on top of the audit. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Councilman Gutenberg.
Yes. On the mid-year budget to expenditure slide. So question on in the fiscal year 26 budget, the police expenditures, right? The police department, I think, is in the general fund, 36% of our total expenditures. So this is just like a matter of style of presentation kind of question. In this like gives the impression that the police department is this gigantic outsized piece of our budget. And I'm wondering if there's a way to present this that is more proportional to the fact that the police department is 36% of the general fund, not this massive thing.
It's kind of hard because we're doing it by department.
Yeah.
The only other thing I could do is do it by, I guess, function like administration, public safety, but public safety still is
Yeah.
going to show. So this is to show where the activity is happening across the
Right.
town. But we could do it as function, which is administration. That would be the town manager, finance, planning as
Yeah.
one, and then public safety, which is code enforcement and the police, and then public works as the other whole,
Yeah.
and then the parks.
Yeah, and I don't have a recommendation for the right answer, but probably just some smaller, some buckets to group these maybe
And
is probably it.
This
Yeah.
chart was really to show the
Yeah.
proportion of spent to budget.
Yeah.
So you can see where the police are kind of almost 50%.
Yeah.
So that's what that report was meant to show, is where the departments are based on their budget and their spending.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And my questions were answered, so thank you very much. Thank you for a very great update. Much appreciated. All right, next on our agenda is the Dorchester Community Center.
All right. All right, council, good evening. This evening, for your first topic for discussion this evening is going to be the Dorchester Community Center, and town council is going to be asked to provide direction to staff on whether or not to proceed with construction of a new community center at 400 Dorchester Street. There is a little bit of urgency with this conversation due to a couple of factors. One, there's a state grant with some hard deadlines that are approaching, as well as there was the dissolution of the original operating partner at Dorchester Community Center. And so those two factors combined are putting a little bit of pressure on us. So what I'm going to do this evening, though, is give you a little bit of historical context to frame some questions for your conversation this evening. So just by way of history, the Dorchester Community Center initiative originated in 2019 when the town began transitioning the facility at 400 Dorchester Avenue from office spaces and police storage use to community serving purposes. The project was conceived as a collaborative effort to address community needs, particularly focusing on youth programming for 5th through 9th grade students. On June 7th, 2019, the town entered into a formal agreement with 3 partner organizations to form the Dorchester Community Center Alliance. They were the Southern Maryland Sports and Learning Association, Lifestyles of Maryland, and Haven of Rest Ministries. By August 2019, the town officially changed the facility designation from office to community center, reflecting the intended transformation. The Alliance established a clear mission to provide recreation and educational supports, specifically targeting underserved youth populations. In 2022, in April, there was a community-led design process, and the town and the Alliance partnered with the Neighborhood Design Center to conduct an extensive community-driven design process. This effort ensured the facility would authentically reflect the needs and aspirations of those it would serve. There was extensive stakeholder engagement. The NDC facilitated multiple virtual workshops and an in-person session at the existing Dorchester Community Center. 16 participants engaged, representing ages 12 to 60, and intergenerational input ensured broad community representation. The community defined their vision through a design manifesto calling for a safe, welcoming second home that would support intergenerational connections and creative innovation. Community members overwhelmingly preferred a single building design over a campus model, emphasizing the importance of a unified space that fosters stronger community bonds. The resulting conceptual design encompassed 14,933 square feet and included such accessory purposes as multipurpose gymnasium for sports and large gatherings, commercial training kitchen for culinary education and job skills development, makerspace for hands-on learning and creativity, a computer lab for technology access and digital literacy, a music room for arts programming. The design also incorporated significant environmental considerations such as restorative landscape design with pollinator meadows, forested walking trails, high-efficiency infrastructure, including solar panels, green roof systems, and rainwater harvesting systems. The town has secured $1,250,000 in state capital grants with no local matching funds required. However, these grants come with strict legislative deadlines and legally binding use restrictions that create urgency for council action. There were 3 grants in total. The first grant, DGS 20-186 for $250,000, was authorized in 2020. This has a critical deadline. Unexpended funds automatically terminate on June 1st, 2027. This is the earliest and most urgent deadline driving immediate council action. Grant 2, DGS 22-350 in the amount of $500,000 was authorized in 2022. And in order to remain in compliance with that grant, the project must be under contract by June 1st of 2029. Grant 3 is DGS 24-224, another $500,000. It was authorized in 2024, and that project must be under contract by June 1st of 2031. The town is legally bound to use these funds only for the purposes stated in the grant applications. And these include the specific creation of vocational training areas, such as a commercial kitchen and makerspace, the intergenerational programming spaces, sustainable energy systems, those solar panels, rain harvesting, and green roofs, and community-defined program elements from the NDC design process. The Dorchester Community Center Alliance has effectively ceased all operations. The Alliance has not met in over a year, and in fact, we haven't been able to find records since 2023 or 2024. Its organizational status has been forfeited and it is no longer in good standing with the state. Accordingly, it is not a viable entity to take on operations of a new facility. This represents a fundamental change from the original project structure where the Alliance was envisioned as the operating partner. There were some concerns expressed by previous councils as well. The prior town council expressed significant concerns about completing this project without having identified an entity to manage operations. And specific questions included how much operational funding would the town commit to, and for how long would the town provide operational support? What would the long-term financial obligations be, and should the town proceed if there wasn't an identified operator? And then you add the impact of staff and council turnover. Significant staff and council turnover has resulted in the project becoming dormant. Institutional knowledge about the project's history, the community design process, and the grant commitments may not be fully retained among current decision makers. This agenda item this evening seeks to reestablish that knowledge base and provide council with complete context for decision making. Over the past 6 months, staff has identified 2 entities as potential operators of the facility. The Boys and Girls Clubs of Southern Maryland, that are an organization that operates youth-focused community facilities, and Responsible Reentry, and this is an organization focused on community support and reintegration services. Staff recommends developing a transparent, open process to request applications from any interested entities. This would allow the town to vet potential operators through a fair, competitive process, ensure public accountability and transparency. It would allow us an opportunity to evaluate organizational capacity, financial stability, and program alignment, and consider organizations beyond those already identified. This operator selection process could occur on a parallel track while the construction procurement process moves forward, provided council is comfortable with that approach. There are some risks should council decide not to move forward with this project. First of all, there is the loss of the $1.25 million in state grant funding. These funds cannot be repurposed for other town needs and would simply be forfeited back to the state. There would be a loss of political capital. The town aggressively lobbied state legislators to secure these grants. Returning the funds would damage relationships with state partners and potentially impact future grant applications. Breach of community trust. The 2022 community design process created expectations. Abandoning the project would signal that the community input was not valued. Missed opportunity for underserved community. The youth population will lose access to promised programming and facilities. And of course, the lost investment to date. All preliminary design work, community engagement efforts, and staff time invested since 2019 would yield no return. There are risks of continuing without an identified operator. There's uncertainty about long-term operational costs. Without an operating partner, the town may bear greater operational burden than originally envisioned. Programming gaps. A facility without established programming may underperform community expectations. And facility maintenance responsibility. The town may ultimately end up needing to manage a specialized facility outside typical municipal operations. The original project schedule targeted a construction start of July 1st, 2025, with completion by December 31st, 2026. These dates have passed. To meet the June 1st, 2027 deadline for the first grant, the town must immediately enter into the procurement phase. Every month of delay increases the risk of losing that grant, which totaled $250,000 in grant funding. Construction costs. A detailed construction cost estimate is not provided in these background materials. The $1.25 million in grant funding may not cover the entire cost for essentially a 15,000 square foot facility with specialized spaces. Council will need to consider the estimated total construction cost, any local funding gap between grants and that construction cost, and source of funding for any gap. Operational costs. Long-term operational costs represent the most significant fiscal uncertainty. Annual utility costs, electricity, water, sewer, gas, maintenance and repairs for a 15,000 square foot facility, specialized equipment maintenance, insurance and liability costs, landscaping and grounds maintenance, janitorial and cleaning services, security systems and monitoring. Programming costs, if the town ends up operating or subsidizing programming, there's staffing costs for director, program coordinators, support staff, etc. Program supplies and materials, technology and computer lab resources, marketing and community outreach. There are some different scenarios that council will want to consider, and the fiscal impact will vary significantly depending on the operating model. Scenario number 1 is a full partner operation. The partner organization assumes all operational costs and programming responsibility. The town fiscal impact would be limited to building ownership costs. That includes major capital repairs and structural systems. Scenario 2 would be a subsidized partnership. The town provides facility and covers utilities, maintenance, and the partner handles programming. The town bears operational costs, but not programming expenses. Scenario number 3 is town operations. The town would operate the facility directly, and the town would bear full operational and programming costs. Council must address several fiscal sustainability questions. What is the maximum annual operational subsidy the town is willing to commit? For how many years would any subsidy continue? What performance metrics would trigger reassessment of town support? And how will operational costs be funded? Through general fund or user fees? What happens if an operating partner withdraws after facility construction? And then in your packet, as you're accustomed to, council, we align this initiative with the strategic plan, and we detail that for you thoroughly, as well as your sustainability considerations and your ADA considerations. And I know you've had opportunity to review that, so I'm going to go ahead and skip that and get to your recommended action for you this evening, and then stand by to answer any questions you may have. So staff is seeking town council direction on the following questions. The foundational question, the most important one this evening, the primary question is, does the town council wish to proceed with the community center project? Because frankly, if there's not a consensus to move forward with this project, then we can end the conversation right there. So that's the fundamental decision that we need to get feedback on this evening. Because this decision will determine all subsequent actions. Council should consider the risk of losing 1.25 million in state grant funding, the impact on relationships with state legislative partners, the community's expectations from the 2022 participatory design process, and the needs of underserved youth in the town, as well as long-term fiscal obligations and operational uncertainties. If the council wishes to proceed, the June 1st, 2027 grant deadline requires immediate action on construction procurement. And so we've got a couple of options for you to consider there. Would the council be comfortable proceeding with the construction procurement without a confirmed facility operator? Option A, authorize the staff to issue a request for proposal for construction while simultaneously conducting an operator selection process on a parallel track. Option B, delay construction procurement until an operator is identified and an operating agreement is negotiated, accepting the risk of grant forfeiture. Or option C, authorize a construction RFP with the explicit understanding that final construction contract execution will be contingent on securing an acceptable operator. If council does not choose to proceed, then we will need to have a conversation. It doesn't have to be this evening, but if we decide that we don't want to proceed, staff will be coming back to you at some point to talk about how the town should manage grant fund return and stakeholder communications. If the council decides not to proceed, we'll seek direction from you on our communication strategy with our legislative partners, our public communication with the community members who participated in the design process, alternative uses for the 400 Dorchester Avenue property, and whether any scaled down community programming could be offered at the existing facility. Staff recommendation. This evening, the staff is recommending that the town council authorize the staff to initiate a request for proposals for construction of a new community center, maintaining the program requirements and sustainability features established during the 2022 Neighborhood Design Center design process and required by state grant agreements. Simultaneously authorize staff to develop and release a request for proposals for facility operations using a transparent, competitive process open to qualified organizations. Then, at a point in time, direct staff to return to council with detailed construction cost estimates and any funding gap analysis, operational cost projections for various partnership scenarios, recommended evaluation criteria for operator selection, proposed timeline for integrating construction and operator selection processes, and a draft operating agreement framework defining the town and operator responsibilities. Staff believes we need to establish a decision point of no later than June 1st of this year, by which an acceptable operating partner must be identified with the understanding that construction contract execution would be contingent on securing such a partner. We believe this approach will preserve the 1.25 million in grant investment, honor the community engagement commitments, and maintain relationships with state partners while addressing council's legitimate concerns over long-term operational obligations. And council, that's my staff report, and we are standing by to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. And before I open it up for discussion here, could you also tell us what was the catalyst of a community center coming to La Plata and specifically in that area?
Absolutely, Madam Mayor. So I wasn't here, but through Discovery Learning and reading a lot of files and emails on this topic, which I needed to do to give you the historical context, I did come across the origin story. And so really, the former police chief, Chief Schinner, was the champion of this And looking, if you remember early in my staff report, I said that the facility at 400 Dorchester was being used by the police department. And so Chief Schinner had a building, and then he had a vision for how it could be used. And it was all precipitated by what could have been a very bad event with a very bad outcome. Fortunately, the professionalism of our law enforcement officer that was on site during this incident kept it from being a bad outcome. But there was an incident in the neighborhood near 400 Dorchester where law enforcement engaged a town teenager who had a handgun. And there was a bit of a standoff or an incident surrounding this. Now, it turns out that the handgun in question was a pellet gun, very realistic looking, of course. And like I said, could have been a bad outcome. And so Chief Schinner, the police chief at the time, really saw this incident and then thought in a very visionary way about, and asked questions about why is this happening? What drove this incident and how did we get here tonight? We're all fortunate that this wasn't a bad outcome, but how do we prevent it from happening in the future? And that's my understanding is what sparked the conversation around what we need is some kind of community center where the youth of our town can go to have the support mechanisms in place that they need to help them make good decisions and exercise good judgment. So that's my understanding of it. I'll pause there and see if Michelle, if you have anything you would like to comment or maybe ask questions of council.
All right, we will go. Thank you for that. And I will reserve my questions to the end. I'm going to start with you, Councilman Gutenberg. Do you have any questions about
Yes.
DCC?
Yeah. So there, it is a very compelling origin story of how this project, the vision of it came to be, and it's been now a number of years since that all happened. And in looking at this, these projects and what it's going to take to realize this vision is where I find myself really with some questions, right? So for whatever reason, and I don't know what they are, but the reality is we have not been able to connect with this project in a way where we get traction with it. And so my questions are really around some of the things that I think we need to do and consider to get there. I very much like this project. I'm very much in favor of what it's trying to achieve. And in a time when the town is growing as much as we are, and there are new amenities in neighborhoods, HOA owned, there's also assets, new town assets being provided by some of the development that's coming into the town. I really like the idea of some of this growth being able to generate assets and benefits to the town in places that aren't where the growth is focused, right? And reinvesting in some of our older neighborhoods, right? And in parts of the town that aren't receiving that influx newness, right? So in that context, though, I look at this project and the number of square feet that it is and the amount of money that we have is essentially $1.2 million. But when you look at what the scope of what that project really is, here's my question, right? I think that my question to you is I'm making just a basic assumption on 15,000 square feet of finished space in the way it was described. And if you just use just a back of the napkin kind of estimate of $150 a square foot, don't know how realistic that is, but that gets you to basically twice as much as the cost of what we already have. And then an additional cost that I see that I want to ask your view of how we may get there is this project is really proposing using space that is currently the police department annex. And so I don't see any discussion here of where does that relocate to. That's an additional cost related to this. So I kind of want to hear how you think we move forward with the execution side of this and the big issue of where we think we see funding coming from, in budget space, taking growth into consideration though. There's
Yes, sir.
just costs coming here, but there's also new revenue coming.
Yes, sir. Sir, you've cut right to the heart of the issue. Okay, so because I'll answer your second question first. So the building right now is vacant. There's nothing in there. It had been used, GCC was using it, and then they left, and then another nonprofit was in there, and they've exited as well. So it's vacant. So there's no displacement of law enforcement right now. They're currently housed in the police station down at the end of LaGrange and right across the street here off of Queen Anne. So the 400 Dorchester is empty.
Well, I mean, isn't that the impound yard and there's vehicle
That's
storage
adjacent.
down there?
That's adjacent to the structure that we're talking about.
So
So-
when we talk about like the walking trails and the things around the water tower,
Okay, so I understood. So
Okay.
when there's actually 3 town-owned lots that are contiguous and adjacent to each other. 402 Potomac, which is the road that you come in on,
Mhm.
then 400 Dorchester, and then I don't know the address of what you're referring, is where the police evidence storage is. Okay, so yes, in that regard, depending on the future build out of what this might look like and the footprint that a new building would go on, do we demo the existing Public Works warehouse that's there? That's at 402 Potomac and use that space? Does it give us the ability to retain the police evidence storage that's on the other side of 400 Dorchester? There's a lot of questions that would have to happen. So, and I think you're getting right to the heart of why this isn't an easy project to continue to move forward. So there's that. And then your first question really is the heart of it, which is it possible to build this facility or something like this facility for $1,250,000? I think the answer is probably not, which means that the town then would have to raise the additional funds or fund the additional cost, whatever that is. And that's information that this council doesn't have tonight. And so that's why the recommendation was let us go out as staff and come back to you with information. So I'm sure you're sitting there looking at me saying, well, why didn't you have that information? Why are we having this conversation? We're having this conversation because I needed to get the background and the history on this council's mind. You've been in these seats now for 8 months, and I owed you a conversation on Dorchester, just like I owed you the conversation on the Firehouse Museum and all those things we talked about in September. We just had them stacked up. This was one. It's just taken me longer to prepare this because of the amount of historical files I had to go through to understand where we are today. So, it was my intent to get this to you in December before the holiday break. We didn't get there. So I'm bringing it to you in February. That's why I'm bringing it to you, but I'm bringing it to you with incomplete information, which is why the recommendation is let us go back if there's a desire to move forward. And I know that you probably can't answer that maybe definitively tonight, but I think it is very safe to assume that there will be an additional cost for capital construction, vertical construction of a new facility that the town would likely have to fund. And I don't know what that number is, but I think it's safe to assume that there would be some amount of money. And then there's still the issue of the operational costs. And are we going to be able to find a partner? Option A, when I read the 3 different options, option A is the option we want. We want the operational partner that comes in. We sign a long-term lease of a brand new facility over to an operator, and then they've got it. We still take on the roof and the HVAC. And, if there's a plumbing main break, we do base building. Otherwise, the operator has electric, water, sewer, programming. You've got it. Come tell us once a year what a great job you're doing. Okay. Option B is a scale back version of that. And then of course, option C is the town has a brand new building and now the town is in the business of programming for community services, which is not something that this town has done to date. Lots of towns do it. Lots of towns, lots of cities do that. Is that something this council would be interested in doing? So a lot of questions for this council, a little bit of information, a lot of historical background, but we just had to get this conversation on the books and get it started. And hopefully I can get a little bit of direction tonight, at least the foundational question about, I think we want to move forward with it, reserve the right before June, though, to say, when I come back to you with a price tag to say, no, maybe we can't afford it.
okay. Yeah, I appreciate that context. And the one thing I'll ask then though is as you come back with answers, if that's what we do tonight, right? Assuming that, I would want to know, I would want to see some forecast of revenues, right? That give us some context of whether we can afford, you know, the additional pieces that we may plug into this or need to. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
Councilman McCormick.
Yeah, thank you for this, Chuck. And I want to thank the council for bringing this issue up, I think all the way back in May during one of our first meetings requesting this info, and thanks for following through on that. I think there's really three things here in this document that we have to talk through, and I'm going to make some comments first, then I'll ask questions. That's kind of how I'll structure this. So first is the idea of the Dorchester Community Center, or whatever the name would have ended up being. And I don't want to speak for the council, I'll speak for myself. Great idea. I mean, awesome idea to have some sort of community assets given to areas, to Councilman Gutenberg's point, that maybe aren't growing as some areas on the fringes of the town are. And it's a good way to reinvest into the community, into folks that clearly demonstrated a need and a want for it, and asked their representatives up here to go ahead and move that forward. And that's what they did back in 2019, 2020, when this first started coming to fruition. All these grants started to be applied for. So the idea aspect of it, got it on board, no argument from me there. Then there's the historic and the actual future execution piece that this document talks about. And I'll give some feedback here. I think the document kind of muddies the two together, right? And I don't think it does it on purpose. There's no nefarious point as to why that happens. I think it's just the nature of how these documents work. So you have a lot of historic context here that kind of lays out, listen, this is the organization that came together. These are the folks that kind of, you know, was their brainchild. This is who was going to end up running it. And then these personalities left the town for a multitude of reasons, whether they stopped being employed by the town, they sought other employment, they moved to a different area, whatever it was. And this council that we had that was going to run this community center disbanded. And to your point, hasn't had a meeting on the record since 2023, 2024. And when you have a personality-based project like this, that is one of the risks that a town can run into. So understand the historic piece, get that. Then you look at the future aspect, right? What is the operational cost to this if the town were to take it on, which I think is your third option here, right? The town's going to run it. Let's say we go forward with that option. Well, this town has never done that before. You obviously have a lot of experience being town manager and in other areas as well. You probably talk to town managers in the region. So you probably have a decent idea as to kind of like, what does the baseline for something like this look like? You may not have a one-to-one, but you probably know through, you know, MML conference or whatever the town manager equivalent of that is. I'm sure there's some sort of group chat or email or whatever where you share ideas. This is probably something that's discussed by towns that already have this. So I think there's probably a baseline somewhere already out there that we're going to know kind of what that operational cost is. That this document makes it seem like, nope, we don't have that info at all. There's no way we're going to know it till July 1st or June 1st or whatever. The second recommendation here is kind of a hybrid between the town will pick up some operational cost and maybe do a little bit there. Maybe another organization, they're not there 7 days a week, 24/7 operating it, but maybe they run Monday through Friday, whatever hours, right? Kind of a hybrid model there. And again, I would argue with the operational expertise that we have in this town staff, somebody knows what that looks like, whether they were employed at another town where that happened, or again, these conferences and these places where we share all these great ideas. Somebody has clearly talked about this at some point in the last 6 years. I would be hard pressed not to believe that happened. And in the first recommendation here, the one with my limited experience, I think probably makes the most sense. But to your point, I can't make a decision tonight because that info is not present, is a third party would come in, run the operational costs. The town would essentially, for lack of a better term, lease this out to them, right? And we would cover HVAC, IT, electrical, roofing, et cetera. Again, I don't think there's enough info right now to make that decision. So I think this document kind of muddies. We're presenting a lot of info historically. We're asking for a future action. I don't know how I can make a recommendation on the future action with what's been presented here tonight. So I know you and I talked on the phone, I think it was last Friday, I can't remember, on this issue. I was going to repeat a couple questions to make sure it's on the record and all that. So the first question I have for you is, when you were preparing this document, did you reach out to any of the former two councils that passed these grants or asked for these grants? Or did you ask Mayor James for any feedback on this document?
No, I didn't go back and talk to any of the elected officials. Now,
Okay.
during my preparation of this document, I did talk to staff and other individuals, but none of the electeds.
Okay. One of the call outs in this document, for lack of a better term, is that staff turnover made it tough to grab the historic info here. But we have an individual up here right now on the dais that had the historic information because she was present the whole time. In fact, she signed all 3 grants, and she actually signed one of the grants, 22-350, as mayor and CEO, right? So she was in the seat in an interesting unilateral position where she knew the council had wanted this and willed it, and she could have executed, did not get executed. Do we know why that happened? It's not accusatory. I know it sounds it. But the reason I asked that question is we had an interesting dynamic back when 22-350 was signed, where we had the mayor who was a member of the council, right? And the council's will was to go and get this grant. It's in the budget, therefore, as a policy decision, as you've told us before with the policy. What was the historic context there that it was not executed? Was it staff turnover? Was it failed execution? Was it something else that we don't know? What was that reason?
I don't think that there's a single reason that I've been able to piece together. I think it's a lot of little reasons. I think the council at the time asked a lot of questions about operations and didn't have a good feeling for how the operations were going to be and the expenses associated with that were going to be covered. And so I think that was absolutely a factor. I know that staff turnover absolutely played a role in it. But to put a pin on a single reason, I can't do that.
I apologize. I might have asked colloquially single reason, but again, multiple reasons would be a perfectly acceptable answer. And I know it's complicated, but yeah, again, that's something I think needs to be called out and talked about. And then the final 2 things you bring up here from a risk standpoint or a concern standpoint, right? So the first thing you talk about is political capital. Again, I'll speak for myself here. I don't think there's any political capital this town could gain or lose with our current delegation and state senator on this issue anyway. I mean, he's walking out of the Senate. I don't care about that. I don't think that's a risk. But the community trust piece, I think, is pretty important, right? So the community trust piece here, we all know, we all campaigned at some point. I know at least 3 of us brought up this stat before, but when you look through the old town survey that was pushed out a while ago with the previous council, I think 2 years now at this point, community trust was already below 50%, right? More folks in this town did not trust the direction that the council was going versus those that did. I think personally, this council could earn a lot of trust with the community if it were to make a tough decision that was in the best interest of the town based off of the historic context you gave. And what I mean by that is, if you were to ask me to purchase a car and I don't know the make, model, where it's located, the sticker price, or the actual monthly price on it, how can I give you an answer tonight? How can I say, yes, we should move forward with this, or no, we shouldn't, or yes, we should request an RFP? It's been 6 years. Why wasn't an RFP used at any of those 6-year, periods? So I guess I would like a little bit more clarity as to what specifically are you asking for? Is there going to be a motion on the table that we're all going to talk about here? Is it a consensus to get this info from you? Do you think you're going to be able to get something by June 1st or July 1st that's radically different than the previous councils have looked for in the last 6 years? What's your desired end state with the recommendation you give?
So I think you asked 3 different questions there.
Yep.
I'll try to address them in my response. So consensus
Okay.
tonight is all I'm seeking. Really to empower me to start dedicating time and effort to this, to go and develop the additional information so that I can come back to this council to help you make an informed decision. Because this, when you go back to our retreat in September, DCC wasn't on there. It wasn't one of my priorities, still is not one of my priorities to work, but it clearly needs to be talked about. And so I'm going to have to dedicate some time into developing the information so that you can make that informed decision. So this is on matters of information or discussion, I'm not sure, on the agenda. So there's no formal action tonight.
Okay.
So it would just be a consensus, because on the off chance that the majority of council has already made up their minds about Dorchester and said, no, I'm not, there's no way. On the off chance that was going to be the case tonight, then I don't have to do any of that additional work and find time to do that and then bring it back to you, right? We've never talked about this. I have no idea where this council stands on this topic. So I had to have this conversation to at least know that now I need to put this on my plate and quickly, because June is right around the corner and I created the June date. You didn't. I'm the one that said, if we're going to do this, then probably June of this year, we need to make a decision. So I just need to know, that fundamental question tonight, understanding that don't have all the information. This is, I hate to say it this way, but this sometimes is the nature of the job of the elected, is you're going to be put in positions where you're going to have to make decisions and give staff guidance with less than ideal information.
Totally agreed. So I guess maybe I wasn't wording my question correctly. We're going to have to pass a budget before this June deadline. I would assume one of those line items is going to be $1.25 million for Dorchester Community Center. Is that not the council telling you the direction they want to go with? Why is this not part of the budget discussion? Why is this a separate item today that you're looking for a specific consensus on?
If I wait until March 17th to have you all tell me that, yeah, we think, go out there and give me some more information, it's another month gone.
Okay,
So
so
it's-
it's currently in the FY26 budget now.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's direction right there. Now I'll leave my comments there. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Yes, I appreciate the report. I thought it was pretty good based on the circumstances that we have to deal with. Just FYI, I did talk to the individuals that were originally in the alliance. I did that before I was a member of council because they, I think two of them brought it up to me. And so I concur with your recommendation. I think it's the prudent course of action. Since we do have the money from the state, since we did promise the residents, since you don't want to waste the money in this state climate when everything is being shifted to the localities, I think there's a real chance if it doesn't happen now, it won't happen in our term or anything like that based on this climate. And it doesn't commit us to anything, even though I do understand it does take man hours and a lot of work on the staff. But I think that's a prudent course of action. See what the deal is. And then, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We gave it the good old college try. We can go back to the residents in full faith and honesty and said, hey, it was there. It's just one of those things. The town, didn't come through as promised, but at least we tried now. And this is what it is. So I think that's a prudent recommendation based on where we're at right now.
Thank you.
So that's all I have.
Thank you. I made a lot of comments about this in May when we had the budget conversation for this current fiscal year. There's a lot of risk, but we're here today with what you're asking us. The question is, you're going to put out an RFP to get this construction design there. The question I have is can you do a parallel or ask for two things in an RFP? One, do what the neighborhood design concept is, or two, to kind of not put a lot of financial liability on the council with the $1.2 million. What additions could they do to the current building to at least get the program started? I think that would be a safer option than just getting RFP, knowing that that whole facility is going to be probably, to what you said, double the 1.2 million. But if they could do additions to the physical plant of the building, and we can still find an operator.
I'm going to be very careful in how I respond to this, because I'm going to want to go back and read the grant applications and then read the grant awards to see the exact language, see if these funds can be used for a remodel or repurpose or renovation, or if they were intended for new construction. I think that it's the latter, but I don't want to be definitive in that statement. But that would be the first thing that I would check. And then I could potentially go out and seek some kind of rough order of magnitude costs to come back to create the space, either using existing structures or without. So depending on the grant language, I think that there's a way to do what you're asking.
Yeah, I'm really concerned about a new construction build out of 1.2 million. And quite frankly, a lot of nonprofits operate 90% off of some type of government funds. And the reality in today's world, at least for the next 4 years, that may not be a reality. So having us foot the bill for a brand new facility and asking a nonprofit to fully fund it, their program might be a tough ask, but maybe we can meet somewhere in the middle. So.
Okay, thank you.
So as Mr. Stevens said, DCC was operational. They had, and it was for several years that we had activity there. It just disbanded, and it was because what is different now, I can say, is that the town has a town manager actively advancing this project and engaging viable operating partners, and you're fully aware of the political consequences of inaction. We didn't have that before. In addition, we have a dedicated planning department, which we didn't before, with the capacity to support this effort, and a police department that continues to view the community center as an important priority. Taken together, these factors materially change the risk to me of the profile compared to years prior, because we're actually getting momentum. It was mentioned, one of the things that I am very well aware of is political capital. As part of the process, the town actively lobbied our state delegation and our governor's office to secure these funds. And when I said actively, it was the police, the chief of police, it was the director of legislative services back in 2018. It was, I guess she was the town clerk there. It was the council in the 2017 council was presented with this, and they made connections too. So it was the town that submitted this request and subsequent requests. So I heard my colleague here say that he doesn't really think we have any political risk on that because we've got a state senator that isn't even showing up to the meetings. He is our key person that supports the Boys and Girls Club. And I have had a conversation with him that he is willing to find more funding for us should we need it. He's opened two Boys and Girls Clubs in Charles County and is seeking our area to open a third. So I would never want to burn bridges just because we're unsure of how to move forward tonight. That is part of the process that we do find more information on that. We talked about the involvement in 2022 of the design process. I can speak to that. Now, when you are building something, let's just say a house, and you say design a house, and you don't give them parameters of how much you're going to design a house for, you are going to design a Taj Mahal. You're going to design something that is all of your wants and not your needs. And that's what this was. Absolutely. It was wants and not needs. I think that this can be scaled down, especially if a nonprofit, and I'm going to use the Boys and Girls Clubs just because we have spoken about them. They aren't into the athletics there. So having a state-of-the-art all-purpose room is not what their model is about. This could be scaled down, and I have no doubts that it could be. And we also have an extra $100,000 that of ARPA money. So we have 1.350 money, $1,350,000 on that. That 100,000 was put aside using the ARPA money. If the facility doesn't move forward, what alternative investment are we proposing for the youth population this project was designed to serve, particularly in the Kent Avenue corridor? Do we have anything?
I was hoping that was a rhetorical question, Madam Mayor, because I'm not aware of any other programming that the town has lined up.
I am not either. And all of the time, money, effort, design, and community engagement that we have invested in since 2019, as you mentioned, will come to a stop. Is it typical for municipalities to require a finalized operator before initiating construction, or is it just more common to run those processes parallel?
I don't know that there's going to be a typical answer, Madam Mayor, because I'm trying to think of the last time I saw a local government build a brand new facility and then hand it off. I mean, I think what you'll see more frequently is the repurposing of an existing facility for a new purpose, and then a nonprofit comes in. I think this is probably different in that the town is looking at vertical construction of a new facility.
And one of the other things that has been explored, but again, we did not have the manpower like we do now to really look into this a little bit more, is a public-private partnership. And we also reached out to the county to see if the county could staff it if we built it, because the county does have community centers in other areas of Charles County, but there isn't anything in La Plata that would benefit our residents who are also Charles County residents. So there are, moving on tonight, you're looking for a consensus as to, and I've heard from my colleagues that we need to get a little bit more information, which you needed to gauge interest. If there's no interest, there's no more information needed. So with that, unless any of the colleagues have any other questions, go ahead, Councilman McCormick.
Yeah, I want to be clear. Again, the idea, the historic, and the moving forward, I think, are three different pieces. My frustration is that we've already, as a council, stated our opinion on this with the budget. I'm confused as to why Dorchester Community Center for the last 6 years is the one item that gets put into a budget. The council then has to restate, yes, we're in favor of this. No action is taken. You voted in for a budget. The council is forced to restate they're in favor of it. No action is taken. Rinse and repeat. That is my frustration point. This was just a historic document with no action asked. I'd be cool. And again, I'm going to vote in favor of it because it's voting the same thing I voted back in May. That is my frustration point with this.
And to your point, I can understand your frustration. My frustration level is there too, but we did not have a leader in place that could juggle so many balls in the air right now as our town manager is. And
I totally agree.
that went by the wayside because that didn't rise to the top. Whereas we've got a town manager right now that I don't think he's juggling 3 balls like a normal juggler does. I think he's got a lot more in there. And this, as you have said to your point, this has been in the budget and it's moved forward and moved forward again. This is now, how are we going, what are we going to do? That is what this one is the conversation.
Just a point of order. This is asking for an action if we're going to move forward or requesting more information
We're getting a consensus.
on more information or an action. Thank you. So it's not requiring an action. Thank you.
Well, it does, a consensus is an action. It's, you have to.
Yeah, my point is we already have this voted in with the budget. It's already 5-0.
Yes, I just have one question, and not to go too far, because you mentioned the county approached about operating the facility. Was that a go, or is that they weren't interested?
There was hesitation,
Okay.
but it would be logical to partner with them if they, because their staff is 5 times what our staff is.
Yeah, there's options for, not to rehash, I would really like to see more so how do we repurpose and add on to the facility we have today to get the most amount of use out of the grant funds, assuming that the grant allows for that. That I would like to see some type of option come back in June if that's where we are.
Councilman Gutenberg.
Yeah, my question was going to be, you have 5 questions here, and I think, what we talked about isn't really answering all of those yet. So are you planning to kind of walk through these the way we did on budget night, or?
No, I'm not, Counselor.
Okay.
I think, like I said before, I just needed to get a sense of whether or not this council still wanted to support this project, because when I see it, and to Councilor McCormick's point, I see it in the budget. Budget's a plan, okay? When I look at the numbers in there, I don't think it's realistic to think that you're going to get a new building with what's in the budget. And so I think there was a disconnect there, at least in my mind, that I felt compelled to bring to council's attention. Like, there's money in the budget. It's not going to buy what you've envisioned. And frankly, I don't know what any of you envisioned, because I haven't, well, since you've been seated, you haven't had a conversation on Dorchester Community Center, because I saw the 2 meetings before I got here and you didn't talk about, well, there was one conversation, but you didn't see the vision. You didn't see the neighborhood design work that was done. So I had to bring this for you tonight. So if I've heard what I need to hear. I think if the mayor wants to call a consensus vote and I can hear the yays and the nays, that's fine. Staff's going to go back. We're going to come back. We're going to develop more information to try and put hard numbers around what this project would actually cost. We're going to try and get a better sense of if there's an operator out there that might be willing to partner with us. I don't know. I don't know if there's a partner out there. We probably will do an RFP on that. I know my report said RFP for construction, but you're not taking formal action and giving me formal direction, so I may not do an RFP because I probably need to move quicker than that. Probably talk to some architects and some construction firms to get a rough order of magnitude cost that I can come back to you more quickly. But I've heard enough.
Okay, that satisfies me. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
And Mr. Stevens, when you are looking, if this is the will of the council, is there a way to say to a builder, you've got $1.3 million. What are you going to do with it? And say, come in, pretty darn close to that. Or we even explored, or we, the DCC explored having, I think they call it a pole barn, something of that sort that's outfitted inside. So it's, manufactured, but then customized inside. So there's so many options out there, but if you give them the design that the Taj Mahal, I mean, we can't afford the Taj Mahal there. And we knew that back then, but there were no parameters put on there.
Understood.
All right, so council, I am looking for a consensus to direct the town manager to explore more viable options to bring back to us to see if this is really something that we can go forward with. If you are in favor of that direction, please say aye. If not, say nay. All in favor?
Still a yes.
So much, Mr. Stevens, for all of this hard work and putting it in. And you know more about the DCC than I think most people do and the origin, and you did a very good job putting that together. So thank you and your leadership.
Thank you.
All right. So next on the agenda is our discussion about LEOPS.
All right. Good evening, Town Council. Again, Chuck Stevens, your Town Manager. I'm going to give you your staff report. A little bit different format for this topic this evening, if you'll bear with me. I've just got a script that I'm going to read from. It's not your staff report because the staff report was pretty dense and there were a lot of numbers in it. And so it doesn't really lend itself to an oral presentation. So I'm mixing it up on you this evening. But tonight we're going to ask council to provide policy direction that will have implications for our police department, our budget, and ultimately our community. To be clear, this is not a routine administrative matter. It's a fundamental choice about how we invest in our law enforcement workforce and what we're able to sustain fiscally over the long term. The way I see it and the way I've laid it out for you this evening is council has three basic options. Proceed with the transfer of our law enforcement officers to the Law Enforcement Officers Pension System, or LEOPS. That's LEOPS. It's an acronym, Law Enforcement Officers Pension System. And for the rest of the evening, I think we'll say LEOPS. So either authorize that transfer, proceed with that transfer, decline to move forward, or request additional information before making a final determination. Whichever path council chooses, we need to notify the state by March 1st to preserve the option of implementing this change on July 1st of this year. So what exactly would be changing? Currently, our officers participate in the same retirement system as most other town employees, the Maryland State Retirement System's Employees Combined System. The proposal before you would move them to a different system specifically designed for law enforcement with enhanced benefits that allow officers to retire earlier and with higher pension multipliers. The case for making this change centers on workforce competitiveness. Proponents of LEOPS will argue that LEOPS offers substantially better retirement benefits than our current system. Supporters of the transfer believe this would help us recruit qualified officers in a competitive market and retain the experienced personnel we've already invested in training. We've seen increasing adoption of LEOPS across Maryland municipalities, and several of our neighboring jurisdictions already participate in the system. The question is whether these workforce benefits justify the fiscal commitment required. And that fiscal commitment is substantial. In the first year, the net additional cost would be over $500,000. That represents more than 160% increase in our pension costs for law enforcement personnel. These costs don't remain static. They grow over time as salaries increase and as we add officers to keep pace with population growth. By mid-century, our projections show this could cost the town several $1 million more annually than staying in the current system. These projections, they're based on sound actuarial work, but they're estimates, not certainties. They assume certain rates of investment return, salary growth, and staffing expansion. The preliminary valuation we received is based on a census from last year and doesn't account for any vacant positions that we might fill before July. The actual costs could be higher or potentially lower, depending on how various factors unfold over the next several decades. The central challenge here is budget capacity. Under our current budget structure, we simply don't have room to absorb over $500,000 in new recurring costs without making adjustments elsewhere. If council chooses to proceed, we would need to work together during the budget process to identify a combination of approaches, whether that's new revenue, cost reductions in other areas, or adjustments to compensation structures. No single mechanism is likely to be sufficient on its own. I also want to acknowledge what this decision represents from a workforce perspective. Our officers work in a demanding profession that takes a real toll over the course of a career. The question of whether they should have access to retirement benefits comparable to those available at neighboring agencies is a legitimate one. At the same time, we have many dedicated employees across all departments, and we need to ensure that however we address this question, we do so in a way that's fair to everyone and sustainable for our community. Staff has provided you with comprehensive analysis in the written report, including detailed cost projections, a comparison of the two pension systems, information about implementation requirements, and alignment with our strategic plan. We've also outlined the operational considerations and the timeline we'd need to follow if council decides to move forward. What we have not done is tell you which option to choose. Each of the options before you represents a defensible policy choice. There are reasonable arguments on multiple sides of this question. This is fundamentally a decision about priorities, how we balance workforce competitiveness against fiscal sustainability, how we weigh short-term costs against long-term benefits, and how we allocate limited resources across competing needs. Our job as staff is to give you the information you need to make that choice, to be transparent about both the benefits and the costs, and then to implement whatever direction you provide. If you choose to proceed, we will work diligently to meet the state deadlines and to build the fiscal implications into the budget. If you choose to decline or to defer pending additional information, we will proceed accordingly. Before I close, I want to recognize the work that went into preparing this analysis. Our town treasurer, Karina Larson, has done extensive financial modeling. Our human resources director, Monica Kennedy, has researched the operational implications. And the finance committee has provided thoughtful input on the fiscal challenges this would present. And Gabriel Roeder Smith and Company provided the actuarial valuation that grounds our cost estimates. This has been a collaborative effort to ensure you have the most complete picture possible. I know this is a difficult decision. There's no option here that's costless, and there's no option that addresses every concern. But that's the nature of governance, weighing trade-offs, making tough choices, and doing the best we can with imperfect information to serve our community's long-term interests. Staff stands ready to answer any questions you may have, to provide any additional detail from the written analysis, or to walk through any specific scenarios you'd like to explore as you deliberate. And with that, I'd like to invite Monica and Karina up, join us at the table, and turn it over to the council.
Thank you. Before I open the floor for questions from council, given the importance of this item and to keep the meeting moving smoothly, I'm going to respectfully request that each of us keep our questions to 10 minutes or less. Okay, thank you. That'll allow everyone the opportunity to fully engage. I'm not pointing any fingers.
No.
All right, I'm going to start down here with Councilman Johnson.
All right, thank you and good evening, Ms. Larson and Ms. Kennedy, and thank you for your synopsis, Chuck. I don't have any questions. Thankful for you all. I do have some comments and just indulge me for a few minutes. So what jumps out to me tonight, or when we got this packet, was the first year impact additional cost of, let's call it $540,000 highlighted in red. Highlighted in red makes you think that's bad, right? And it is an additional cost. You pointed out 160% more than what it is today. And I will understand why people believe this is not a financial stable option to the town. But let's put some things into perspective. So back in the fiscal year 2025 budget at the time, the town was considering the LEOPS question along with other enhanced benefits for both the police department and public works at the time. Sticking with just the topic tonight of the police department, the enhanced pension plan that was placed into the budget was, let's call it $641,000. That was partially funded by the tax increase at the time. On top of that, the Maryland State Retirement Pension System cost was roughly $304,000. So that total cost for the police department alone that year was $944,000. So today, when we look at this, the data and numbers we have, we're looking at a first year cost of roughly, an additional cost of roughly $540,000 added to the current on top of the retirement pension today, which is $346,000. That's bringing us to about $886,000 for year one. That's a $58,000 saving from fiscal year 25. No confetti, it's not a large number, but there is a difference. And the upfront cost is about $100,000 lower than what the enhanced pension plan option was at that time. So here's the bottom line. Any pension plan that offers better benefits and meet a particular industry standard for years of service will have a cost. The analysis today is mapped out over 25 years. I will argue that if analysis was done on the enhanced pension plan, it will be mapped out over X amount of years and it will show a yearly increase cost over year. It would have been a flat rate. So when I look at the numbers, the difference is clear. There is an impact on our workforce from both law enforcement and civilian, no matter what option we make. However, the decision dependent tonight will be immediate to the workforce. It's not about the dollars. It's about providing the benefits that strengthens retention and recruitment for the future. For those reasons, I'm prepared to move forward with option A as one council member.
All right, Councilman Sampson?
Yes, I'd like to thank the staff for their work. I thought as far as the cost analysis, I thought it was very good on that end. And looking at it, there was a couple things that jumped out at me. And just, I will save my ideas as it pertains to the budget for the budget discussions. So I will just say up front, so it'll make more sense. I'm ready to move forward option A, to go forward with LEOPS. Now, why? The strain on the budget that we would experience is not unusual compared to any other municipality. They're all going through the same things. I fully recognize that the contributions will increase. That was the only criticism I had, is that I do think the contributions are actually understated. I think we will end up contributing more over the long run. Okay, when I did that, and I went back and did that myself by pulling other municipalities in this state and other similar states with similar programs as LEOPS. But I do think our contribution estimates are actually low. So I do think there will be a bigger cost, and I'm fully aware of that. There were a couple instances where I could not determine. So, and I know that you all, it's kind of putting you on the spot. So if you don't have an answer, I understand, because that's hard when somebody's asking you a question, you get them prepared. What was the projection? And I don't know who's the right person to answer this. So for the 4.4 million in 2052, what was the projection of that as a total part of our budget during that year?
Yeah, I don't know. Did we calculate it percentage of budget? No.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, so we didn't calculate as a projected percentage of a budget in 2052.
Got it. I understand. And the reason I bring that up is because one of the things when I'm looking at it is that if you tell me 4.4 million in 2052, I don't know what that means, because I don't have a benchmark to compare it to within the scope of the budget. In other words, I know that in 2052, because I did the math, that's equivalent to, I think it was $1.9 million in today's dollars. So we would take a $1.9 million equivalent hit. But once again, I don't know what the budget, because I don't have the revenue projections, and I know we should estimate conservatively, less than we would normally estimate for something like this. But, that was one thing that I was looking at. The other thing is that, the value, and when I say value, this is something that I'm, talking about. The town of La Plata is projected to grow, and I'm talking about population wise, over that period. We know, and this would be true for all town employees, not just for the police officers. They're not paid what they should be. We know that. There were not retirement benefits across the board, especially for the lower wage employees. All people are not what they should be. We will have a retention problem going forward, in my estimation, because we're not paying them what they should be, nor are we matching them with the benefits they have. So I think the police department does an outstanding job. One of the quotes I had that I was told a long time ago was that, you know, when the police is doing a good job is when you know, or you don't even notice they exist. And in this community, we don't have the problems. You don't see us all in the papers. I'm not saying we're perfect, but you don't have those problems. And I want to keep that. And that's actually a very valuable thing. You know, especially when you got law enforcement being sued for millions of dollars every year. That's a very valuable thing. And even that case that you brought up as an example with the Dorchester Community Center. So in my mind, the value of a police department that is doing a good job as a whole, that is not costing the town millions of dollars or the equivalent proportionate to our size year after year, is not embarrassing the town and is providing safety, I think is immeasurable in that regard. The only other thing I will say is this, is that if we don't do something to incentivize and start moving that direction, you know, I see this as the police department now. We have to do something for the others later, but this is the issue before us right now. We will eventually lose our police department as far as retention standard. You can't ask people to do but so much and pay so little and say that we care about them. So for those reasons, and like I said, I'll keep my comments pertaining to the budget as how this relates to the budget discussions, because I think that would be the appropriate place. But I do think, you know, I do think the product overall was good. Like I said, the only thing I couldn't tell, which I would really like to have, was that projection, because like I said, I don't know what that means. If it's $4.4 million, 26 years from now is only 20% of the budget. Well, I mean, it's 35% now. So I would have to have that data. But based on where I'm at now, I'm in favor of moving forward.
Thank you.
Councilman McCormick?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stevens, Ms. Minor, Ms. Larson, Ms. Kennedy for the information here. Really appreciate it. Thank you. And thanks for working with LEOPS to action what we put in the budget, get this information in front of us so we can make a decision for FY27. So thank you very much for that. I just want to call out two things that my colleagues to my left, your right stated. One, sounds like we already have the money raised from a previous tax increase from another year, in which, again, the council did not action that which was in the budget. And then two, Councilman Sampson brings up a great point. We have no idea what these numbers mean if they're not compared against something else. So I think the big red number is a clear bias in this report. I think there's a lot of things in here that need to be challenged. Let's go through it one by one. If I look at the LEOPS law enforcement officers pension system FY21, and I see a 2.71% increase in the overall rate for that, do you have a reason, or do you know the historic context why that happened? It's clearly an outlier. It's the highest number by almost a 2x margin. What happened in 2021 that caused that?
I don't know. These numbers actually came from the state.
Yeah, I know.
Actually from the state. So
Yeah.
I used the data from the state.
I understand. That's not the question I'm making. Don't take this as an accusatory tone. It's a simple question. There's historic context behind these numbers. So in 2021, LEOPS had the right size because so many regional and state partners were entering the system. They had to literally right size it. That is the issue, or that's the statement that the state made. They've actually also made statements on the record from the LEOPS department, and
and the state that as more police departments enter this, the expected rate cost is going to be nowhere near what it's been historically. So again, we look at this 0.76% average 12-year rate increase, but we're including outliers that are historic anomalies that are one-time costs that won't happen. So I bet if you were to remove that number and you were to look at this with an actual year-over-year rate cost, it wouldn't be as scary as this number shows here. So that would be point number one. Moving on from there, again, we're looking at what I would call like soft benefits to this program. So I look at LEOPS. It's been clear. I've stated this many times, both on the campaign trail in my capacity as a council member and as a private resident, that if we do not have a competitive benefits program or benefits package with local municipalities around us, counties around us, the states around us, Northern Virginia police departments around us, it is logical to assume that police officers will leave to go pursue those better benefits. I would ask every resident to go listen to the Finance Committee's last meeting in which our own chief gave testimony as to how he was tempted to leave for Charles County and only stayed here because of the mentorship of our former chief. Great that Chief Schinner was able to keep folks retained, but again, that becomes a personality-based system that we're looking for to retain talent here. Let me ask this question. Do we know the cost to recruit, to train, and to employ a brand new police officer in La Plata?
I'll look to Monica to try and give probably an estimate. I doubt that we have that calculated for you this evening.
I can try to find specific numbers, but because I don't actually manage the full recruiting process for the police station, so I'd have to work with them to find any additional factors that I may not consider.
Yeah, so the point and the reason I make this up is we've lost a handful of police officers in the last couple of years, and this council actually watched the swearing in of at least 2 police officers in our short tenure. There's an incurred cost there that this LEOPS approval would be a huge saver for on the other end. So what we're doing here in this report is we're going, here's the big upfront cost. It's a really scary number. There's $543,000 that you guys have to find plus or minus. And that's crazy. Like there's no way we could do it. But then on the other side, like, well, one, that money has actually been raised with a prior tax increase for something similar to this that was not actioned, right? So I would argue that, previous councils and even this council approved one-time costs like our facilities master plan, like our housing needs and assessment plan that will not be in the budget next year. That's a very easy one-to-one for me, just looking at this as, not a finance expert.
Counselor, if I
Yeah.
could, I do want to push back a little bit.
Please.
Okay, because you said something that I don't believe is accurate in this report.
Go ahead.
Nowhere in this report does it say this is a big scary number, we can't do it.
You're right.
The staff has said, and I said in my report, we will follow the guidance and the will of this council. And I apologize if somehow presenting these numbers came across as staff taking a position one way or the other.
No, you are correct, and I do apologize. There's nothing in the report that says this is a big, scary number. What I would ask again is folks go to the Finance Committee meeting and read and listen to those transcripts and what the committee thinks there and recommendations from some of our staff members that are here present today. So I do appreciate that correction. Thank you. Moving on again, so we see that there's an incurred cost when it comes to recruiting and retention. Clearly, I would argue that LEOPS is going to be a benefit for that from a logical standpoint. There are studies that do that as well. Let me ask this question here. There is an admission in this report that there's growing regional adoption to LEOPS, right? So other municipalities, counties, police forces are already adopting this regionally. So not just the state of Maryland, which we already know is happening, but regionally as well. If this town was forced to enter LEOPS 5 years from now, do you think the entry cost would be higher than or less than today?
I'm not sure of that, but one thing I want to note is we got a credit because of the rate.
I agree.
So the rate is because they're trying to fund the whole thing, and we coming in later, we're getting a credit for that. And that could be part of the reason they had an increase of that 2.71 that you pointed out.
Mhm.
Well, we're getting a credit because as they increase those rates, that whole amount is not what the town owes to enter into the program. So I can't answer if, oh, would it be cost more or less? Because I don't know what the future rates will be 5 years from now.
So you don't know what the future rates will be from now, but obviously we're going to make an assumption on it, right?
Well-
With, in this report, it says 0.76% increase. So if that increase were to occur year over year, and let's say we're forcing this in 5 years because every municipality, every county entered LEOPS, we're the only ones behind, police officers are leaving in droves, just to follow this logically to its conclusion, and we entered it 5 years from now, would that be a more fiscal responsible thing to do or a less fiscally responsible thing to do?
And again, it's hard to say because I'm putting projections based on historical data.
Yeah.
I can't predict what's going to happen
but I-
5 years.
But I think you are, and again, I think the data is clear here from this report that it would be fiscally prudent if we're going to enter LEOPS anyway, which it looks like we're going to be forced to because of regional trends. It makes sense to enter today than it does to do it later, right? And again, I think Councilman Sampson touches on this with, if we don't have a competitive benefits program, police officers are going to leave. We have historically seen that already. Let's say Charles County ends up absorbing the town of La Plata. Well, if there's an issue in an area outside of La Plata, right? Charles County Sheriff's Office officer, heaven forbid, gets into an issue in Indian Head, we have to subsidize the legal cost behind that and everything that happens there because that's now our sheriff's department. We don't have a La Plata police force here that we're responsible for. The final piece I'll bring up is that this town receives a tax credit because we have our own personal police force that greatly outweighs the cost of if we were to be absorbed by Charles County Sheriff's Office anyway. So the police department is asking for this, has asked for this for a while. It fiscally makes sense to me. I'm clearly in favor of this. I've been in favor of this since day one. I just want to make sure that, again, when we look at this report, there's some historic things that have to be called out, and I just want to make sure that they're prevalent and correct here. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So when I look at this report, the thing that is concerning to me is not what's in it, it's what's not in it. And so the report gives us costs and it gives us a forecast of the size of the police force. And then it marches through and it uses the foundational data that we got from the state on it. The thing that bothers me about the way that this is presented is it doesn't give us a range of staff size. It uses a per capita size of the police force. It says this many police officers for this many residents today, and it goes linear as we grow over the right, and the population increases threefold, right? So we go from basically 10 to 30,000. And so that is the basis for the cost rising as much as it does. And so I fundamentally have an issue with that estimate for a couple of reasons. One is the International Association of Chiefs of Police and the International City Council Management Association both strongly discourage using that kind of methodology to just plot out a police force, specifically because it results in overstaffing and higher costs. And so what they actually recommend is a model that uses metrics and a workload model. Okay. And so that would result in a lower number of staff. So I think the report would have been better if we had gone, if that was the worst case scenario. Okay. I can use that context, but I think a more reasonable number is something, my assessment is something rather than 75 when we get out there, 52, right? As a way to balance this against. Second to that, the other thing that's missing from this, though, is we're using growth to show the costs, and then, but there's two sides of that coin. So growth does absolutely drive costs to the town, but growth also drives revenue, and so we are adding. Look at the water report we got from the town manager a few months back. We're adding over 7,000 homes. So why aren't we forecasting what that looks like here? I took a stab at doing that. What that looks like is if you look at the new construction in La Plata and roughly use the following method. Not saying it's right, but it's something, right? 50% of what gets built is single family homes, 30% is townhomes, 20% is apartments. And if you look at the new construction assessed median value, right? Median revenue generation of each of those. You can build a table for those 25 years and look at the revenue generation that has. And then with that context, this table that's in here, way less scary. And then if you then go, well, 2 years ago, the council passed a 3-cent tax hike. That 3-cent tax hike generates today just under, my math, just under $600,000. And then if you say the police department, if we hold it as a council going forward at 36% of our general fund budget going forward, and we earmark the 3-cent tax rate that we applied specifically for the purpose of improving employee benefits, specifically to the police department and public works, granted, but we're here today because we decoupled those two issues. This town has been struggling with this for years, the better part of a decade, arguably, and we haven't been able to get to where we are other than by now separating the issues so we can declutter it and go forward. But when you do those things in the estimate and you also apply just I'll call it, my view, conservative triennial, every 3 years we reassess property values in the town. Say that's 6%, 2% a year, that's below inflation. When you lay those factors all together, this is self-funding today. This isn't scary. When I played those numbers through, this is not scary. It is self-funding with it if growth goes, right? Now, if growth doesn't happen, if we have water issues that slow things down for a bit or other economic things, well, then we haven't generated the metrics to drive the police force to go to hire at a higher rate. And if we're being disciplined about holding ourselves to 36% of the general fund, again, this doesn't feel scary. It feels still self-funding. And so, and then when I look, it is expensive. When we go from a 12% cost to a nearly 40% cost to fund this for those specific sworn officers, it is expensive. But compared to what? You look at, I'm going to name a couple of towns, right? Cumberland, Maryland, Easton, Bel Air, Hyattsville, Greenbelt, and Laurel, all on LEOPS today. They are all either the size that La Plata is now or the size it's going to be during that study. They are doing it. They are thriving, right? They are able to handle these kinds of costs. When I look at other states, we look at the 40% number, right? 39%. If you look at LEOPS type programs in other states, the state of Florida, the state of New Jersey, right? They have comparable kind of benefits packages, and they are roughly in line with that. They are within a few percentage of that number. This is what it costs to have a professional force that is compensated appropriately. There's 5 different agencies that officers can work for as sworn officers in Charles County. We are the only one where it's not LEOPS. And if you expand it out broader than that, it is worse, right? Like there's so many options for these officers to go. Young people are smart. When young people come to the force and we're an accredited agency, they are providing good services, and a unique factor, I think, too, with La Plata is with our community policing that this police department has committed to, culturally committed to the accreditation and what that brings. Any resident can go and look at all of their procedures. You can go right online. You can see what their policies are for take-home police cars, what their policies are for how they do traffic stops, what their policies for, almost anything an officer can come in contact with. There's a place they can look that up. That's good for the officers. That's good for us as residents. If things are happening that we see with our police department and the way they're interacting with us, we can kind of self-audit that, right? And that's of value to us. And I think we ask our police officers as well. A unique thing that's not true for Charles County sheriff's officers is in La Plata. If you're a police officer, unless you become the chief, you're going to be on patrol your whole 30 years. Another factor, right, in retention that I think, so in total for this, right? I very much want us to move forward, but what I would ask, right? And if this is what the council wants as well, obviously, but from my perspective, I want to move forward with this. I'm confident with it, but I don't think we should be asking the council to be happy with moving forward with this and the public record with the numbers I just said, right? That's my math that I did on my own. I think that to complete the public record on us doing this and people having confidence in what we're doing is fiscally responsible, because this report makes it seem really scary. I think we have to provide that other piece. We have to provide the forecast of revenue that is generated by the growth and a more realistic assessment of what staffing sizes would look like, so that we can present this at budget time in a way where people understand what we're doing and that it's not reckless. Thank you.
10 minutes and 52 seconds. That's all right.
I'm getting better.
Before I start my questions here, I just want to say, as a daughter of a police officer and as a mom of a police officer, I very much respect the profession. My goal tonight is to simply fully understand the long-term financial impacts of the town and the community that we serve. So I'm going to go with you, Karina, first and ask a question, because I've heard several of my colleagues mention this. When we do a tax increase, is that tax increase earmarked, or is it across the board?
That particular one, if you go back to the meetings, it was debated back and forth. It was to fund operations, and we've been using it for that purpose.
But it is a general fund operations.
Yeah.
It doesn't say
There was nothing in the budget that earmarked revenue for that purpose,
okay.
but it is an operations.
But if we move forward, and I don't know the answer to this, if they move forward and we need to do a sole funding just to do LEOPS, is it possible to say we are increasing whatever the revenue is and earmark it for one specific thing, or is it operations on the whole?
Well, we don't earmark tax revenue. Tax revenue is to provide to cover the cost of providing services.
Okay.
Right. That's correct, Madam Mayor. What the treasurer just said is correct. Typically, when council sets the tax rate, the taxes are collected for the general benefit to cover all of our core services, which includes, the wages and compensations of the workforce. So it's rare when council is empowered to set the tax rate, it's rare then to earmark it, the term that you used. Take a state like Colorado, where I came from, where every tax issue has to go to ballot. That's when then you get into really splitting hairs, because what did the ballot language say this tax, and then every penny of it had to be applied exactly to what the ballot said. Here, when this council is setting the tax rate, that is to fund the town typically.
But not one specific thing. Thank you. And also the tax differential, we do get a tax differential. You and I have sat there and begged for a tax differential. I believe Councilman McCormick said that negates each other, basically, because of its duplicity.
No, the last one I believe was a 12% tax differential. That is significantly lower than what the cost of just the police. That's to help. What that tax differential really is for is to cover costs that the town provides services, so the county does not. It's supposed to be saying that the county doesn't have to provide these services because the town does, and so the county gives us a tax differential. That's what it's for.
And it's for public works.
Yeah.
It's for our police. It's for, and I think it's for permitting as well. It's for planning. I think that's in there too. It's duplicity of services is what it is. But I just wanted to make sure that that is mentioned as well. So with my questions, revenue on assessments. When we have, and we are growing, and we know that we have houses that are currently being built, is that enough revenue to fully offset the increasing LEOPS obligation, or is there going to be a gap that has to be addressed somewhere else?
Well, it's hard to say with revenue because as our development grows, so does the cost. Yes, revenue grows. And to be honest, I only put this out for 25 years because the report gave us the credit for 25 years. Generally, I would not push that out for that, but because the state gave us that number, I wanted to push it out for that.
So I hear you saying that you're projecting, it's projecting. Who would have projected 2008, right? You wouldn't have projected that. So you're projecting the growth based on certain factors. Let's go on the other side. As I mentioned, 2008 and the financial hit that this country took. How does that impact our contribution to the LEOPS? Does it go with, would it be less? Would it be the same? Because doesn't the state set that? We don't set that. So we can't vary on that.
Yeah, we have no control over it. The only thing we're going to have control over is the actual salary amount that it's based on.
All right. So a financial crisis where assessments are low and we're not getting the revenue, we would have to find an alternative way to make up that. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. The annual credit, it expires in 25 years. Then what?
Well, then it's basically salary times the rate is what it is. There's no more credit applied.
So, all right, we're going down the road and we find out this is unsustainable. We cannot do this anymore. Can we exit out of the LEOPS program?
No, this is a permanent change. Once you're in it, we're in it forever, regardless of what it is, and we're going to be responsible for the costs. And the only way that it could change is if Maryland state changed the requirements for participation.
Okay, so we're making a decision for not only now, but in perpetuity.
Correct.
Okay. How do we prepare our residents for a budget that is just by these numbers that may need some additional funding to balance a budget? Your job is to bring us a balanced budget, Mr. Stevens. What are you looking at
Yeah, we're-
forecasting?
Yeah, we're going to bring you a balanced budget. I mean, that's going to happen. It'll get released publicly on March 6th, I think. That should be the Friday before the 10th. And then your meeting's on the 17th. So anytime budgets are very, very similar year over year, and no matter where you go, there's always a competing demand between the wants and needs, and then the revenue that you have to fund those things, whether it's core services or programs or whatever it is. So the challenge that I face, that the staff always faces, is how do we maintain providing core services, ensure that we compensate our workforce appropriately, and do all of those things. That's what all those budget questions were about when we met in December. So it's really just a math problem for the staff. We'll bring you a balanced budget and we'll figure it out. Now, what we will do is we'll tell you where we found the savings and where we trimmed, what we did to achieve that budget. We'll lay that out for you, because if you disagree with how we got there, that's what we need to know. And then we'll go back to the drawing board. But we will bring you a balanced budget. We've already started. We anticipating a potential LEOPS decision this evening. It would be a whole lot easier for us to strip out a LEOPS cost and then go back to the drawing board where we are in the budget process now. So we've already anticipated the 2027 costs in our budget, and that's the numbers that we're using as we're trying to hit that balancing point right now.
It's encouraging to hear that you're looking at ways, and I don't know what you're looking at cutting in order not to increase, other ways, and to find a way to balance the budget, because something's got to give in order to make sure that it's a balanced budget. All right.
Madam Mayor, I just have a follow-up question then, because the way this keeps getting framed is that there has to be cuts. So now I'm going to ask a direct question. Why does this analysis not include the growth side of the equation? It shows the cost growth, but it does not show revenue growth that travels with that
Yeah,
assessment.
absolutely, Counselor. That's a great point, and we'll provide that for you.
Oh, okay, so based on that, right? Like I think that we are overstating it by looking at these numbers. They dramatically overstate the amount of cuts that could potentially be needed somewhere else in the budget. If the general fund is largely funded by property taxes, and property taxes are the driving growth factor here for both the staffing level and the cost, then I don't understand why this feels that scary. Because if we are spending today 36%, it's going to go up a little bit because of the cost of LEOPS, but that is absorbed by the 3% tax increase that I sat in this room as a resident and listened to the previous council explain why that was done, and it was done to improve benefits. And we all sat here at budget time and we talked about market rate or above market rate in total compensation for employees. And I believe what we said was that we wanted to be at market. For the police force, LEOPS is delivering that. That is what the market does for professional police agencies. That's what we have. And so when you, the town treasurer both have, you don't have the exact same retirement packages as the entire staff, and it's different than the police force. There are professions that the market drives those costs, right? Or what those compensations would be. For public works, right? Like I think we gave the answer that we would want them to be compensated at market. And so if the Public Works Department today does not have a retirement plan that is equal to what the kind of levels they're at in public works in Charles County, then what I'm asking town staff is, why is that not being proposed to us? And we'll make a decision on that. But the difference over what's happened in past years and why I think we're able to move forward is that we have decoupled the unnecessary complexity of trying to do all of this for everybody all at once. And so I am happy that we are staying focused on the priority that we generated and that we're moving forward with this. But I think it's really important that the public record has a complete analysis so that people do not get the message that this is reckless, right? Because it is not. It is bringing a parity to our police force and the service that they're providing to the town.
Councilman Gutenberg, if I hear you correctly, are you opting in for option C right now to bring back next week? No, that is not at all what I'm saying, right? Like what I'm saying is I'm confident that we can move forward. But the kind of analysis that I did on my own, right, which I think should have been provided to us, that was, the concern all along was that there, that part of the reason that this has taken so many years, the better part of a decade, to get to a executable solution on this, is that there has been this my perception, this drive to kind of do all of it together, right? And that complexity, I saw it myself sitting in chairs out in the audience. The complexity of that made it so that it was inactionable. And so we are moving, we had to prioritize, can't do everything at once. This is the one that came up for this council as a priority to do first. So we are marching through that. And I think we should move forward with it. I think, though, that staff should produce a complete analysis because the public deserves it, because they need to understand what we're doing. And I think all of us here, I don't want to have to bring my math to the table. You've seen me up here before, not happy about having to receive someone else's math. Right. And so I wouldn't ask you to do the same. So really what I want is for us to have that complete picture. And I'm relatively confident that it's there. I want the public to be confident that that math is right. And I want my peers up here to be confident of that as well. So I want to proceed forward. But at budget time,
we need to show this analysis in a more complete way. So that's sort of, I know it's a really long way to get there, but
Got it on to your 10 minutes.
yeah, I'll take the hit on that. Yeah.
I'll-
So-
yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to talk about the earmark issue real quick. It was brought up by Mayor James. You stated that what she stated, what Ms. Larson stated was correct. So let me get this straight. We passed the FY27 budget. We added new cost. Let's call it just cost A, right? Because I don't want to have a policy attached to it. But we call it cost A. It's a brand new policy. It's going to cost, just to keep numbers simple, $100,000. It's going to be a new $100,000. We have to increase the tax rate in order to raise the revenue for $100,000. It's a 1% tax rate, just to keep numbers simple. I have no idea if that's the numbers or not. Okay. And we give you that direction. You're going to use that $100,000 for whatever operational cost you want, or for that specific policy.
The $100,000 comes in as general revenue.
Mhm.
It gets put into the general fund. And as long as we're incorporating the new policy, whatever it is, we're not going to track and account and
I'm not,
audit.
yeah, that's
Where-
not what I'm asking. So maybe I'm not asking it correctly. We raise an additional $100,000 for policy A. In that year, would you, as the town manager, enact policy A?
Yes.
Okay, so here's where this becomes like a little bit of a smokescreen. The town council approved a policy A, an enhanced pension program for the police and for public works at the same time, for whatever cost it was. Mayor James served as the CEO of the town during that time period, and it was not actioned. I mean, if you were in that seat and that were to happen, I think this council would be incredibly upset. And the reason I bring this up is, structurally, there's nothing a council could do if an elected official is in that seat. There's no accountability behind it. So I agree with your statement, Madam Mayor, that if I were to be the town manager as a legislator, yeah, nothing's earmarked. I could do whatever I want with this big pot of money. But I think it's clear that the town manager gets direction from tax increases for specific policies for money to be spent on that policy.
But to specifically say that it is earmarked for that is an inaccurate statement, because it cannot be earmarked. It is for operations. And that is incorporated in there. So
Did the council ask for an enhanced pension program for the police and public works in 2024?
that was budget.
That was part of the budget, and then it was not actioned by the CEO at the time, correct?
It was, yes, it was.
It was actioned, so they have an
It was-
enhanced pension
it was-
program?
It was finalized, but it doesn't take 1 month to do that.
I don't disagree. I don't think it was a month. I think it was 12 months. That's how long the fiscal year is. So for 12 months, it was not actioned. There's no enhanced pension program for the police and public works. So again, we had a town CEO at the time period not act the will of the council. This is the second time tonight we've seen that issue.
And you're very wrong. You're absolutely wrong, because there was a CEO, there was an interim town manager, and there was a town manager. So when did you come on, Mr. Stevens? June 16th? So I argue that you did not do the will of the council. So your line of questioning is ludicrous and argumentative. We're done with this.
We passed a budget after Mr. Stevens joined.
Thank you. Such an emphasis on the Johnson. Appreciate it. I have a question or request, excuse me. There was a comment that we cannot withdraw from this program. Can we get wherever that's stated in the state code or whatever? 'Cause I got a feeling if council just said we don't want to provide retirement to any employee in the town, we don't have to have a retirement system. So for the state to obligate us to a program, I find that really hard to believe. Not saying it's not true. I would just like to find if you can.
That came directly from our representative with the state.
Okay, yeah.
And so the only option at that point would be to withdraw everybody everywhere, not just, we're going to move police back into the EPS. It would be, we would have to withdraw everybody out of there.
Thank you for clarifying that. We can. And just the question of earmarks, maybe the earmarks word is a little inflated. However, there was a public hearing tonight for conversation and testimony from residents about either in support of the tax increase for LEOPS or not, or excuse me, the enhanced pension plan, or not in favor. So whether or not it was earmarked or not, taxes was raised to support a retirement pension system. That I was in the room, I talked, I sounded really like an idiot. I was fumbling over my words, public speaking. However, the conversation 100% was about an enhanced pension plan. Also for public works though, not just saying police department. So, but the earmarks were, yes, if you put it into context, nothing in the budget says that, but the conversation started in fiscal year 2024 for fiscal year 25 about it. It's been longer than that, but specifically about the funds to support an enhanced pension plan. So, appreciate the dialogue tonight.
Madam Mayor, if it's okay, I think we've discussed this in full. And is it possible for us to go ahead and make a motion? Because I'd like to make a motion.
Well, it's not a motion, it's a consensus. Just brought to task by someone being argumentative. So, Councilman Gutenberg, what would you like to do? Option A, B, or C?
A, please.
Okay, Councilman McCormick?
Same.
All right, Councilman Sampson?
Hey,
Councilman Johnson?
Option A.
All right, there's consensus. We're moving forward. All right, next on the agenda, thank you very much for the very robust conversation there.
Mayor James, you didn't provide an option. I want to make sure you have the right to participate.
I do have the right
Oh,
to
okay.
participate. I would be option C because we would need more information, but my option does not weigh on that. All right, moving on to legislation. Our first piece of legislation is ordinance 26-01.
Okay, ordinance 26.
And I apologize, Mr. Stephen, just a quick point of order on this piece of legislation, not the prior conversation. I was not present at the meeting in which this got moved forward to consensus. Am I allowed to still vote on this or no?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Ordinance 26-01, Town of La Plata Employee Handbook. This is your second reading for consideration of adoption. This is an ordinance concerning the Town of La Plata Employee Handbook for the purpose of rescinding the personnel rules and regulations of the Town of La Plata as adopted August 2013 and adopting a new comprehensive employee handbook and all matters generally relating thereto.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 26-01 as presented?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to ordinance 26-02.
Okay, this is ordinance 26-02, amendment of fiscal year 2026 financial plan budget, second reading for introduction. And this is an ordinance concerning amendment to Town of La Plata fiscal year 2026 financial plan/budget for the purpose of amending the Town of La Plata fiscal year 2026 FY26 financial plan/budget to reflect a realignment of the La Plata Police Department and all matters generally relating thereto.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 26-02 as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. That brings us down to our reports from Mayor and Town Council. Councilman Gutenberg.
I will just probably just talk a little bit about the planning commission. So last week, we continued to keep the public meeting open on the APFO. So we're continuing to work that. I think we're all aware of that here. And I think also, I just want to remind the council with the library project, the major site plan was approved, and there's some interesting conditions there. The one that's relevant most to us is that there will be a capital improvement project being proposed for us to consider. And so I won't kind of readdress all of it here. But I would ask that, that's something that if you didn't watch it, go back and look at that. I think that's an important feature of that major site development plan, adding the sidewalks on North Maple Avenue. And with that, I'll end. Thank you.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Nice report. Councilman McCormick.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for all the discussions tonight. So I owe the town a reason why I was not present at the last meeting. So it's good news for our family, but my wife and I are expecting our second child. And because of the ice storm that hit, we had to go to Annapolis on a different day. And of course, I would not physically make it back here on time. So we're looking forward to baby McCormick number 2. Really excited to welcome him or her into the world. We're going to be surprised just like we were with John. So I owe that answer to you guys. I do apologize for not being here. I did send notes and questions to Mr. Stevens before the meeting. Obviously informed on the issues, just couldn't formally vote on it. But again, I owed you that answer. I want to let you know, and I want to let everybody know at the same time. So the council's finding out for the first time today, and town staff knew, I think, just 2 hours ago or wherever I told you, Ms. Minor. So just want to make sure I owe that answer to y'all. I do want to make something else clear to the council. Mr. Stevens, Ms. Minor received a agenda item request from me, and it's a charter amendment agenda item. It's a big, all-encompassing, with a left and right limit to get every council member the ability to put whatever charter amendments and ideas and thoughts they have onto paper, get it onto an agenda, and to have us hash it out. Right? I've heard Madam Mayor talk about inclusive language. I've heard Councilman Gutenberg talk about elections. I've talked about elections. I know Councilman Johnson still has a fifth charter amendment idea that we all voted for already. So looking forward to that discussion as well. But I do want to make the council aware that I have put it to Mr. Stevens in accordance with our rules of procedure. I did put the date for the first Tuesday after the budget. I don't know if that's realistic or not, but I want to have this as quickly as possible after we have that serious discussion when it comes to the budget. So again, when you look at, this council, and I'll speak for myself here, we continue to remain proactive. And I think tonight's discussion really highlighted that. Asking for more information on an important issue like the Dorchester Community Center, I think demonstrates that. And then moving forward with what is a fiscally responsible and frankly, a community responsible plan like LEOP. So really excited with the actions that this council has taken already, will continue to take, and what happens with the FY27 budget. So thank you very much, Mr. Stevens, Ms. Minor. Great job with the reports. Thank you to everybody in the department. While we may have policy disagreements, I think everybody from a work perspective is really providing some incredible information for us. So I think the standard has just continued to improve, and I want to make sure that's called out. Just because we disagree sometimes on policy does not mean I do not appreciate the work you do. So again, thank you very much to the staff, and thank you, Mr. Stevens.
Yes, I'd like to thank the staff for all the work they did. I thought that was a tremendous effort, a lot of work. I know it sounds like sometimes we're criticizing, but actually I'm very appreciative of the work because I think we actually are moving forward. And I say that to segue into just to let everybody know on the council, I was invited to the Democratic, I think it's fourth and fifth club. And I did attend. That was yesterday. And one of the things I did do was mention about the forward momentum of the council as a whole and how the council and the staff are doing things and how appreciative I hear from the constituents they are. And one of the things that I will say to wrap this up is that I can only speak from what I hear from the constituents. What I hear is they like that we are trying to do things, even if they don't agree with us. They like that we're listening and trying to do things. And I think that's attributable to the staff. I think that we're only as good as the staff that support us. And I don't think they get enough credit for that. And so I don't want to be mistaken that we're beating you up for things or criticizing you unnecessarily. I think we're having healthy dialogue. And when you're actually engaged in things, that's what happens. So I'm appreciative of the staff, and I like the direction things are going. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Johnson.
Before you say it, that was a great meeting tonight. We'll wait till the end. I don't have a report. Thank you.
All right, and my report now, I'm going to make it a little bit longer. So I only had 3 things on here, but I think I'll make it. Did you yield your time to me?
Yes, you got done. Yes.
So last meeting, we went and approved the a new town attorney. So I want to formally welcome and congratulate Todd Pounds of Alexander and Cleaver on being selected as the town's new attorney. He brings in more than 35 years of municipal experience, and his background aligns exactly with what the town needs. So he's a strong fit for La Plata, and I am genuinely happy to have him on our team. And then don't get your head really big on this, but I do want to recognize the way that you and your planning commission, Councilman Gutenberg, were so productive on that last planning commission meeting. And you have really, you and your team is a skeleton at times, but you all have worked together very hard and asked the hard questions. And it wasn't, not to indicate that this has ever happened, but you truly take your position so seriously, and you diligently do your work. And it was obvious the last couple planning commission meetings. So that's about all the nice things I have to say about you today. And with that, please join us at our next meeting on February 24th, and we adjourn at 8:17. Thank you for coming.